gangster.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mr. Pitiful podcast. I'm your boss podcaster, Mr. Pitiful.
Who is this?
Coming at you live and direct from a tent underneath the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles, California. How's everybody doing? If you are new to the Mr. Pitiful podcast, basically what I do here is I just tell stories about my life. And here we go. So I met Henry Hill, the gangster, of all places, at a ska show. And I'm not talking about Ray Liotta, the actor that played Henry Hill. I'm talking about the Henry Hill, the man himself. So there was an artist called Eric Monty Morris, who was one of the original sort of ska rude boy singers, late 50s, early 60s, something like that. And he had a couple hits. But he was performing at what we would call an underground show in LA. And what an underground show means basically is it's probably not entirely legal. Probably doesn't have the right permits, probably doesn't have the right insurance. If the fire department comes, probably going to get shut down, kind of a thing. So this was a super sketchy show in downtown LA, and I'll talk more about that venue in a minute. But so a lot of times what these famous Jamaican singers will do is it costs way too much money to ship their band out from Jamaica. And the transportation costs are higher, the hotels, per diems, salaries. It's cost prohibitive to bring like a whole like ska band or reggae band with you from Jamaica. So what a lot of these Jamaican singers do is they scout ahead to every city they're going to play, and they find kind of the best reggae or ska band in the area and then have them learn the tunes, and then in turn they can back them up when they just get up there and sing. So I'm going to this ska show, and I come to find out that my buddy's band is going to not only perform as their own standalone band, but they're also going to back up Eric Monty Morris when he gets up there and does his thing. So I was like, cool. So this was a pretty special show. You know, I like seeing the old school guys, and normally I wouldn't be caught dead in downtown LA, just saying. So I was already kind of not happy about the general location of the venue. You know, this is a good place to get your car broken into, get mugged on the way to the show, something like that. But I went ahead and braved it anyway. So I go down there, and this venue looked like a condemned building, basically. It didn't have any signage on it. It didn't have any marketing on it. I go inside. The walls are painted green, like hospital green. There's no art, no decorations, no beer taps, no nothing. I mean, it's about the most sketch venue you can imagine. It's like 1,000 degrees in there, no air conditioning. And I shit you not, they are selling beer out of an ice chest. They don't even have refrigeration, nothing. So it's about the most sketch underground show you can imagine. So I get to this show, and I know a good cross-section of the people there. A couple of them were like students of mine. Obviously, I'm friendly with like the band and kind of know all them and know all their wives and girlfriends and stuff like that. So I'm kind of making my way around the venue and just kind of saying hello to everybody. And my buddy, who's the singer of this band, is like, oh, by the way, Mr. Pitiful, I would like you to meet Henry Hill. And there's this dude there, and, you know, I don't recognize him. So when they told me his name was Henry Hill, I thought one of two things. Either one, they were just screwing with me, or two, it was just a dude with the same name, you know. So I get introduced to this dude, I meet him, and he's like cool as hell. So we start hanging out, drinking, talking shit, you know. And this whole time, I don't realize I'm sitting with the gangster Henry Hill at this like ska show. And so the first thing that struck me about him immediately was he was a very small man. Now, keep in mind, I'm 6'4". I'm kind of a big dude. Everybody's like kind of small to me in a way. So I was expecting somebody a little bigger, a little more imposing, a little bit more of a presence. But he was a very small man in stature. And I know that we all shrink a little bit when we get older and that sort of thing. But the first thing that kind of shocked me is he was much smaller than I would have pictured. Second of all, he looked nothing like Ray Liotta. Now, I don't know what Henry looked like when he was young. Maybe he did look more like Ray Liotta. But one thing I do like in movies is when the casting is good to the point where like they even find doppelgangers of these people. Now, Ray did a fantastic job portraying Henry. I wouldn't swap him out for anything in the world. But, you know, he just he didn't look like maybe what I had pictured. Something like that. So now Henry took a liking to me right away. He started calling me Stretch because I'm so tall. I don't even know if he remembered my actual name. You know, he just walked around, hey, Stretch, hey, buddy, you know, and we were just having a good old time, like hanging out with this dude. So I didn't really think much more of it. The show was fantastic, by the way. Eric Monty Morris freaking killed it. So I get home and go to bed and all of that. And I wake up in the morning kind of nursing my hangover. And I hop on MySpace, which is what we were want to do. I'm trying to think what year this was, by the way. I think it was something like 2005, basically when like MySpace was at its apex and was probably like the most visited site in the world. This is around when all of this happened. So I wake up in the morning and I hop on MySpace, and there was that little feed kind of at the bottom left that you would like click on and you could read through people's posts and stuff. And almost every single headline was like, I met Henry Hill, pictures with Henry Hill, hanging out with Henry Hill. And I was going like, what? And these were obviously people that had been at the show. So I start clicking on these and going through the pictures, and it's all these people mugging with this dude I met last night. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now? So I Google Henry Hill and compare the pictures, and sure enough, it's the same dude. I was like, oh shit. So that put me in a weird spot because, I don't know, I guess you sort of treat people different when you know who they really are, and you try not to. At least I try not to. And for the most part, I would say like I treat the CEO the same way I treat the janitor. You know, I try to like be cool to everybody. But now that I know that this dude's like Henry Hill and one of like the hardest gangsters ever, I was like, dang. So you do tend to act a little different in front of these people. So he was, I think, living in Malibu at the time. He would drive out pretty far for these shows, like I'd say an hour or more. And keep in mind, you know, we don't judge traffic in LA by mileage. We judge it by time. But he would drive out quite a good miles and time to see these shows. And we would all just like hang out together and drink and enjoy the music. And I think a big thing they sort of brought up in the movie was kind of how Henry appreciated like art and comedy and music and stuff. So like they were at the Copa all the time and seeing these musicians. And, you know, it turns out my buddy in this reggae band's Italian, and somehow him and Henry met, and I guess Henry really liked reggae music and they hit it off and became friends. And after a while, like Henry was going to like their shows. So I'd be there. They were playing in what was generally my area at the time. And we'd all sit in the booth together and hang out and drink and have a good time. And like, you know, never asked him about his past, never asked him about any crimes or anything, never asked him about the movie. We just like hung out. And the one thing that definitely struck me about Henry, and Karen totally nailed it in her little monologue.
Everybody wanted to be nice to him, and he knew how to handle it.
Henry was a very likable, very affable guy. He was just a fun hang. I can see why, you know, he was accepted the way he was and why people liked him. I don't know what to say. Like the weird thing too, there was a couple weird things about hanging out with him. Is one is we all kind of exalted him like a god. Like we sort of treated him a little different. I think I just touched on that. But the girls that hung around our little scene and hung around the band sort of didn't dig the way we treated him. And one of them even called me out one night and was like, you know, you guys are too nice to Henry or something. And it's like, yo, every guy wants to be a gangster. And I mean, this dude's one of the most famous gangsters of all time. And, you know, of course we're going to treat him good, you know. But then another weird spot it put me in is sometimes I'd be like sitting there drinking and I'd feel like a king because I'm like, I'm at the table with freaking Henry Hill and all the normies are off with their normie friends. And here I am chilling with the gangsters, you know, but all of a sudden I'd go, oh crap, what if I'm like being watched right now? Because, you know, Henry was out of the witness protection program for a long time, but, you know, there's still people out there that I'm sure wanted to kill him. I'm sure the police were probably still monitoring him to some degree. And this starts putting me in a weird spot because it's like, hey, am I being photographed with this dude, or am I being watched, or are people writing down my license plate number because I was maybe seen sitting at a booth with this guy? So it was a very surreal thing to be involved in for sure, but it was super cool at the same time. So kind of a funny story about Henry is he liked to paint with watercolors, I believe was his preferred sort of medium. And one night the band was doing, I think it was a fundraiser for somebody's medical bills or something like that. And they did this raffle where they gave away a few prizes. And one of the prizes was a painting that Henry Hill had done. And it was in watercolors. To be nice, it was a kind of a lo-fi painting, if you will. That wasn't like super detailed or anything, but it had its certain charm to it. But the painting depicted the scene in Goodfellas when Tommy and Henry are sitting in the car and they're waiting for the bar to burn down. And they're sort of talking about, you know, Tommy wants to go on a double date with Henry because his date, you know, whatever, doesn't want to go out alone. And then they sort of drive away. So the painting was a scene of Henry and Tommy sitting in the car outside the bar waiting for it to burn. And I remember thinking it was a pretty cool little painting, especially because Henry had painted it. So I didn't enter the raffle because I never win anything, so probably didn't even have any extra money to spare at the time anyway. But long story short, they do the raffle and my buddy's mom wins this painting. And I was like low-key kind of jealous, man. I really wish I had entered the raffle at that point. But I actually worked with my buddy's mom at a pretty posh hotel. In fact, her office was next to mine. And I was always wondering if she was going to like hang it up in the office at work. And I'd walk in and I'd be like the one guy that like knew what it was and where it had come from. But I thought that was pretty cool. So pretty much that's my story about being mixed up with Henry Hill. Sorry to hear about his passing. Now, I know you all are familiar with Goodfellas, which is why you're listening to this podcast, but a lesser known movie you also might want to check out about Henry is called My Blue Heaven. And it actually stars Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, and it's a little more of a comedy and a little more hyperbolic. So it's probably not grounded in a ton of reality. It's basically a comedy about Henry Hill's life in the witness protection program. And I know Henry kind of mentioned like the hardest thing for him about, leaving the life is, he was so used to the life, he couldn't like live like a normal person anymore. So the movie's kind of about Henry's time in the witness protection program, and Rick Moranis plays the FBI agent that's sort of hired to keep track of Henry. And Henry basically drives him nuts because he's constantly getting in trouble and constantly like up to something. And Bernadette Peters is in it as well, who I always thought was kind of a babe. So that's a movie worth checking out if you're a fan of Goodfellas and a fan of Henry Hill. So it's loosely based on his life. I think his character is called like Vinny or something in the movie, but it's actually supposed to be Henry. So anyway, I appreciate y'all for listening. Hit like, comment, and subscribe, and check out more of my real life stories from the Mr. Pitiful podcast. I am Mr. Pitiful signing off. Peace.
This program is continued.